Hello, welcome to another the special marketing live show. After a few weeks break, we are back, and we what an amazing guest we will have today. Just the amazing Neal Schaffer. Okay, he will be here to talk about digital marketing tips, strategies. Also, we will talk a little bit about his books and also his podcasts because this man he's amazing. He's making lots of things at the same time. I don't know how he can. I think he will explain in a while. Okay, so welcome, everybody. It's so good to be here. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, which and now Twitter, Twitch, and also Amazon Live. For those of you who are watching on Amazon Live, please check the three books of Neil and also the podcast. The podcasts are free to subscribe, and please do that because you will learn a lot. And by the way, if you want to become an Amazon creator, Amazon influencer, Neil, it's an amazing source of information for you. And believe me, it's really pleasant and profitable being on Amazon broadcasting. Okay, so tune in. And for those of you who are not watching on Amazon, please type on your browser marketing.live and you can join us on Amazon. Okay, because on Amazon it's better. Hello, Chris. How are you? So let's bring Neil to the stage because he's there in the basement as usual. Let's see. Hello, Neil. How are you?
Hey, Marco. I got to match your energy, man. You're incredible.
Yeah. It's sunny weather here in Portugal, so that's good to start with energy because I think it's important to. One of the things about live streaming is this that people are willing to watch energy, otherwise they will leave and they will go watch Netflix. And I don't want to lose the people to Netflix or Amazon Prime. So
You're absolutely right,
that's
my friend.
that's how it has to be. So Neil, thanks so much for being here again. It's a pleasure to have you here again in Portugal. Okay, well,
Thank you.
today we can say it's a broader broadcast because we are here on Amazon as well, and this is something that it's a new thing. We didn't had last time, so it's funny because each live we do, we are adding more channels to the show. So I'm raising the bar for the next one. I don't know where we will talk about in the next show. So thank you so much. If you don't mind, please introduce yourself, even though there's no a great need of that, but introduce yourself and then we can jump into the conversation. Is that okay?
Absolutely. All right. So that was fun. Hey, everybody. Hey, this is the second time I have been on Marco's live stream. And yes, it was a while. And yeah, you've definitely upped your game, my friend. So exciting to see. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Arnaldo joining us from LinkedIn. Thank you, my friend. Make sure you comment, share so that we can make sure that as many people as possible watch this. So my name is Neal Schaffer. I am a digital social influencer marketing author, consultant, speaker. Man, I've been around. I mean, I wrote my first book on LinkedIn back in, I don't even know which three books yet you're showing. I've actually written 4 books, but I wrote my first book on LinkedIn. Yeah, no worries. I wrote my first book on LinkedIn back in 2009. And then I wrote a second book on LinkedIn in 2011. I wrote a book on social media marketing strategy in 2013. And my most recent book, which is The Age of Influence, actually came out last year, 2020, right before lockdown, or I should say right during lockdown. So I write books. I teach digital social media marketing at a few universities around the world. I'm mainly teaching executives. I've never been to Portugal, my friend. I always want to get there, but I've taught at places like the Irish Management Institute in Dublin and Cork, Ireland, and the University of Jyväskylä, their executive MBA program in Helsinki, Finland. And I consult, I speak, I blog, I podcast. I'm actually, Marco, you said I do everything. I do have 2 podcasts, one with a co-host. I do have a blog that I am very actively blogging on, and I'm looking to really get YouTube going. So maybe someday I'll have my own live stream show too, and I'll have you on.
Oh, perfect. I will be pleased. Such an honor. Neil, I think it's important to talk because, as you mentioned, 4 books, 2 podcasts. We are talking about content. We are talking about sharing our thoughts, our ideas, our expertise with people. How did you? Do you remember how and why did you start it?
I began with LinkedIn, which was the only social network for professionals back in 2008. Twitter had just launched. Facebook was, I think it was still for college students only. Obviously, it was before Instagram and TikTok and all that. So I just became, my background's B2B sales before social media. So I just saw LinkedIn as this incredible networking tool. And as I had moved back. I started my career in Japan. I moved back to the United States and I was in transition for the first time. And I began to sort of tinker with LinkedIn and realize that, if I had a term like, Japanese marketing in my profile, and I had more connections than anyone else with that title or with that word, I would show up first in the search results. So this is where I started realizing that, social media, beginning with LinkedIn, can be an incredibly powerful tool. I also was very active within LinkedIn groups of networking and learning. LinkedIn used to have something called LinkedIn Answers, like a Quora type functionality. And I began to just become what you would call today an open networker. I began with connecting lots of people, and I began to be known both within LinkedIn as well as locally here in Orange County, California, as sort of this LinkedIn, expert, for lack of a better word. And so I began like teaching people just, over Starbucks coffee, right? Not a big deal. But when I found my job, I decided, you know what? I want to keep networking, even though I'm going to start this job. And therefore, I'm going to take all my thoughts and I'm going to start a blog. And I'm going to use the blog as a way to network virtually 24/7, 365 days a year. And at that time, LinkedIn actually supported applications. There was a WordPress.com app inside LinkedIn that I clicked on that allowed me to start my very first blog. And I think I published my first article like July 4th, 2008. And yeah, so I saw blogging as just this networking vehicle of just paying it forward, sharing information. And then that job that I found, serendipitously only lasted 3.5 months. You had the Lehman Brothers crash in 2008. And my wife said, ebooks are really popular. You should consider like writing a book. And I'm like, I don't want to write a book. That's not me. But I realized that I had blogged so much that a quarter of my book was already written, right? So I said, okay, if I don't find a good job in the next few months, I'm going to write that book. And I wrote the book. And after I wrote the book, I got speaking opportunities. And then I got all these consulting opportunities. And that's what launched my company back in January 2010. So for me, the blogging, the podcasting, the YouTubing, it's part of a natural PR machine. It's just the infrastructure that you need if you're a modern brand or a modern personal brand. There have been times where I haven't blogged in a few months. There have been times where I haven't podcasted in a few months. But to me, I really think it's important for me. I see blogging and all this it's part, my branding, but it's also part learning from others. It's also part, R&D, because when I'm writing blog content, I'm also doing research into those areas and I'm learning inevitably as I go along. So it's an incredibly rewarding process, I believe. And yeah, it just begins with, you got to be passionate about it. Otherwise, it's not going to last. If you're looking for immediate ROI, it's not going to last. It takes time, right? But it's something I truly believe in. I highly recommend for anyone else listening.
Okay, you brought me two questions.
Please,
And
I'm hoping for more.
you can pick one and we can leave the other for later, which are: first, it's blogging, because we know this in the digital, mostly in the digital marketing field, we are killing and everything is dying all the time. Okay, SEO, email marketing, and blogging, of course. First question: do you really think that blogging is dead and there's no hope for blogging? Number one question. And the second is more related to LinkedIn, and I think you're more than um, oh my god, knowledgeable to talk about this, because we see these comments on LinkedIn, which those people who get fired, for instance, and they start posting and interacting and networking like crazy, then they get a job, for instance, they completely disappear and for maybe for months or years, and then suddenly they get fired again or something happened in their company and they start rising up in the sky like a comet again. Your thoughts on these two things, but you
Let me
pick one and
tackle,
then
yeah, let me tackle the LinkedIn question. So yeah, as I said, sort of like blogging and creating content becomes part of your infrastructure as a person, as a professional. I believe that networking is the same. And when I wrote my first book back in 2009, it was called Windmill Networking. It was all about this notion of sort of digging your well before you're thirsty, right? It can be quite lonely. You're one person in a sea of billions of people, and there's a lot of people that can help you, and you can help them, right? So the value of networking is in maintaining connections and always being out there. Because if you're only out there and then you disappear, the next time you're around, people might not trust you as much. Like, where'd you go? Where were you? Right. So, and what's also really interesting that I've learned, I'm a solopreneur now, but when I was a corporate employee, there's almost more value placed on you if you have a job than if you're in transition. So it's actually more beneficial to network when you're a happy salaried employee, because that's when, if you may not be expecting that new job, but that's when you will tend to get your best offers, is when you're happiest in your job, you're performing the best. And that's a really, really good reason, if you think about it that way, of why networking should also be part of your infrastructure. It's funny. I have two different podcasts, right? One of my co-host, Amanda Russell, is called The School of Influence. And we interview business leaders to tap into what made them influential. And we just finished an interview today, but it tapped into the similar theme that networking and connections is central to almost every influential business leader that we've interviewed. That's been a part of how they got to where they are, of keeping in touch, of every day reaching out to a few people, of asking for introductions, and not knowing where the conversation is going to go, but that's a person that I want to meet, right? I'm involved. Yeah, I'm involved in marketing, so I want to meet other marketing leaders. It just, I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking to sell them on something, but it's just a natural that I want to meet more because I can learn from them, right? Maybe they can help me. Maybe I can help them. It's only beneficial. And as humans, I find my most inspiration when I meet other people, like when I go to conferences. So I went to Podcast Movement, the biggest podcast conference. It was just a month ago in Nashville, Tennessee, my first in-person conference since all this started. And just 2 days there, I mean, I met not just incredible people who I've already had one-on-one calls with, but it's completely reimagined how I want to do my podcast. So very soon, my Maximize Your Social Influence podcast is going to be rebranded into a completely different name. And you're hearing this here first. And that came from learning so much by being together with other people, right? We, at the end of the day, we're humans. We learn so much, and we get inspired we get activated and motivated by other people. That networking and meeting other people should be an integral part of what you do as a professional.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before you go into the second question, because meanwhile, Freddie on Amazon made another question. Thank you, Freddie. In a while, we will be back to your question, because as you mentioned, and I have a friend of mine, a Portuguese one, which Anolo knows as well, that said me more than once, well, with amazing guests you had on your shows, you already made an MBA because you learn so much from them, and that's the point. And also the networking. For instance, I think I can say this publicly. One day I asked you, Neal, can you say some people to interview on my show? And you said me, oh my God, Christoph Trapp. And then I asked to Christoph more people, and then from the people that Christoph give to me, I already asked them again, other people. So as you can see, the network I'm creating here and how much
Marco,
I'm learning.
and I was on a podcast like this. Well, this is a live stream, and I was on a podcast where I was being interviewed about my new book, The Age of Influence, and they ended up hiring me as a consultant. So when people get together, you never know what happens. I wasn't looking for work, right? But this has been a happy client of mine now for some time. So it's the power is in human connection on so many different levels. So make it part of your daily routine. I'll stop there. And I know you agree,
And
Marco.
The second question about blogging, is it dead or is there some hope for blogging?
Yeah, so it's funny that, and I have a unique perspective because I started out with social media marketing, right? I started out with LinkedIn, and then after I finished the rough drafts of my LinkedIn book, I went on to Facebook and Twitter, and after that, went on to other platforms as well. And I really focused on the social media marketing side. And then with writing The Age of Influence, I obviously sort of had that niche in influencer marketing that a lot of people know me for. But it was actually the pandemic which sort of changed everything. So I published my book March 2020. All these companies reach out to me for marketing help, and they want help with influencer marketing or maybe social media marketing. But I realized that, okay, what are you trying to do? You don't want to do social media marketing. You're trying to reach an objective. And maybe that objective can be better reached in other ways or in multiple ways. And the reason is that, and I know that you've seen this as well, Marco, over the ages, is that, there's more and more people that participate in social media. And the more people that participate, the harder it is for businesses to be heard. So as a business in organic social media today, it is really, really hard to make impact. On the other hand, what are the other tools that we have? There's always other options. So that's where I began, helping clients that came with wanting influencer marketing or social media marketing help to say, well, I can help you there, but you don't even have a robust website. You're not even showing up in searches. You don't even have an email list. You don't even know what marketing automation can do for your company. So I believe it requires a holistic approach. In fact, I'll take it one step further. I'm currently working on my next book, Marco, and unfortunately it's not ready yet. I hope to have a free preview of like what it's going to be about in the next week or two. But the concept is, after the pandemic, we all had to reset our marketing. We had to be digital first, everything that we did. And some of this old school stuff, like email marketing, became very important, because if you post on your Facebook page, your customers aren't going to see it. But if you email them, there's a great chance that they see it. And that's where we get to blogging as well, because people are still searching. Now, if we look at the universe of search over the last 10 years, what's changed is that, number one, you have just more and more people searching on Google for anything and everything. But number two, you also have more and more people searching on YouTube, I believe, depending on the content, how-tos, tutorials, what have you. In fact, at Podcast Movement, one of the things I learned was that YouTube was one of the top 3 discovery channels to find podcasts, and that people are listening to podcasts on YouTube. So anyway, I sort of digress. But when we break it down, Marco, today, when people are online, the top 3 things that they are doing, number one is still social media, but harder and harder for businesses. It's become pay to play. And that's where I believe that influencer marketing and collaborations with others is the key to being heard there. Number 2, people are still doing emails and texts. And number 3, people are still searching for information. So today, you need to have all 3 bases covered. And social media, unfortunately, becomes, I think, to be successful, a combination of influencer marketing and paid media. Email marketing is what you own. Every company should be doing this. And then you have the search part, and the search part is tied to blogging. When I wrote The Age of Influence, nobody knew that I knew anything about influencer marketing. And I came out with this book in the subject. How am I going to get the word out for that? So for me, podcasting was huge, but blogging was also huge. So when people do a search for influencer marketing on Google, I wanted to show up. And now I'm proud to say, out of all my competitors, because I created a strategy, keyword research, SEO optimized content, and I built authority in Google's eyes to the point where for the top 52 keywords that I'm targeting for influencer marketing, I am now second only to a site called influencermarketinghub.com, which is going to be very, very hard to beat. I mean, influencer marketing is part of the URL, but I'm beating Sprout Social, Hootsuite, WordStream, Neil Patel, Forbes. I'm beating all of these companies because of this strategy, and I have more website traffic than ever. And I know that website traffic is leading to people opting into my lead magnets and joining my list. It's also helping me find more business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So blogging is by no way dead. In fact, because so many people think that blogging is dead, I challenge you, if you're an expert in something, if your business provides a product or service, do a Google search, see what comes up in the top 10 pages, literally open each one of those results. And I guarantee you're either going to find, very, very old content, sometimes from 10 years ago. Often this content is out of date the content is just it's not accurate anymore, or the content is just bad. Because a lot of companies outsource all this stuff to writers. They're just copying whatever else they find on the internet, and it's just bad content. So I guarantee you, go into your industry, do a search, and you're going to realize that you should be on the first page of Google. And it's not because you're going to do some voodoo black hat trick. It's because you're truly going to write better content because you care and you're an expert. And I challenge every one of my clients, and I put them on the first page of Google from this very, very same concept. That's the concept I'm going to teach in my book, because it's going to become a digital marketing playbook. Yes, it's going to include social media marketing and influencer marketing, but just as important are the email marketing, and just as important is the SEO, and blogging is critical to that. So, hey, keep thinking blogging's dead. I love it. I'm going to keep, rising up in the search engine rankings because of it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the funny, I'll just end here, Marco. Time is our asset. You can spend 2 hours grinding on Instagram, Gary Vaynerchuk style. You could spend 2 hours creating a YouTube video or two. You could spend 2 hours creating a blog post. You could spend 2 hours doing a live stream, right? Every one of those is going to have different results. But the integral difference with social media is your content's up and it's gone. The lifespan of an Instagram post keeps on getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Now it's even less than 24 hours probably. I have blog posts from 5-10 years ago that still generate leads on my website. Podcasts live on. I'm assuming you archive this live stream to YouTube. Videos live on. So it's time to be investing in a long form content and using social media as a way to connect with people. Getting back to this point about networking. Social media is a great place to meet people, to connect with them, to create genuine relationships. Instead of thinking about always having to create the next content for social media, think of it as a way of, I always want to be connecting with other people on social media, or I always want to be learning in social media. And when you reimagine how you can use social media, I think it all sort of comes into focus, and you get much greater impact when you look at it in that way, rather than on this hamster wheel of content. If you're on a hamster wheel blogging, I love it because that content lives on. But if you're on a hamster wheel content that is here today, gone tomorrow, man, that's a battle you're not going to win. Unless you have a staff of 20 people like Gary Vaynerchuk has.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great question.
So I'll stop there.
Yeah, perfect. By the way, for those of you who are watching, please put your questions. Don't be shy, because we are here mostly. Neal are here to answer you. And we have this interesting question from Freddie. He's on Amazon. He's asking, what influences the influencers?
What influences the influencers? Is that the question?
Yes.
So an interesting aspect. So when I wrote the book on influencer marketing, I realized that one of the reasons I wrote it is that a lot of marketers who are asking about how to leverage influencers, they also wanted to become an influencer themselves. So for a while, the most popular Instagram account is a dog in Japan, is a dog. And it was founded by a marketer who understood how influence worked. And he created, an influencer account for his dog. And now it's number one on Instagram. So there's an aspect of, once you yield influence, you have to leverage it. And what I mean is, if you have let's say you get a large following on any given social media network, or like, Marco, your live stream, you have this incredible audience. If you don't live stream every week, those weeks you're not live streaming, people are looking elsewhere for information and entertainment and connection. So you sort of lose that influence. And there's a danger that if you're not out there often enough, that you sometimes might lose a little bit of that influence over time. So once you have influence, it's like my son, he plays football, plays soccer, right? Really competitive team. And when he made this really competitive team, his coach said, Kyle, congratulations. I'm going to give you, my son's name is Kyle. I'm going to give you one word of advice. That word of advice is that congratulations for making the team, but there's 100 other kids just like you that also want to make this team, and they're not going to stop practicing, right? So there's also, even though, I wrote a book on influencer marketing, there's 10 other people writing books on that subject right now. So you always have to be leveraging what you have in order to maintain and grow it. And one of the ways, getting back to your question, Freddie, this is directly related to your question. One of the ways in which who influences influence are other influencers. You'll notice a lot of influencers do collaborations with other influencers. And they do that as a way to maintain and to expand their influence. And in fact, when they do it together with another influencer, it's mutually beneficial. So in a weird way, who is influencing influencers are inevitably other influencers, in my honest opinion.
Great point. Yes, I think there's this kind of teasing thing about influencers as well, which is interesting, and learning from them, and
And you know what?
seeing.
It's a great way to become influential as well. I look at podcasting as influencer marketing. There's a lot of and Marco, you also have an interview show. You want to tap into people and interview people that might have a bigger following than you, so that they can
Absolutely.
introduce, right? That's influencer marketing. You're tapping into influencers. And most podcasters do this. If you have an interview show, well, nobody knows Neal Schaffer, but I'm going to get some famous people on my podcast. And then, they're going to share it with their network. So they'll find out about me. And I get credibility because I have these famous people appear on my podcast or live stream. So that's a great way to build influence. Don't get me wrong. It's a positive thing. And so if you're looking to become more influential, whether you're a business or a person, by collaborating with other people that are already ahead of you, that already have a slightly bigger community than you, that's really the shortcut. You need to build relationships with those people. And that's what I teach brands, and that's what I teach people.
You just unveiled my most deeper secret.
Oh, Chris. Hey, Chris Stone. So awesome
Chris,
to see you, my friend.
so good to see you here. Hello. Another amazing
the secret's
person.
out of the bag, my friend.
Well, we have another question from Ronaldo from Rio de Janeiro. Sunny and lovely, and I don't know what else we can say about Rio de Janeiro. I need to go to Brazil because there's this brotherhood with Portugal and Brazil, and I really want to at least to spend some time taking some sun in aguinha de coco. So even though Ronaldo kind of miswrite your name, it's with an A, not an I. When he mentioned,
I am the real Neal. N-E-A-L, yeah. But it's okay. Everybody from the Starbucks barista, everyone misspells it. It's okay. I can't speak Portuguese, so please forgive me as well.
When you mentioned podcasts, are you referring to just audio or audio and video?
Great question. So I don't know, Arnaldo, if you're a content creator like we are, if you have your own podcast. So there's a lot of people who will record a podcast and just pop it into YouTube. And there are apps that allow you to do that. Repurposing content. I have never done that because I believe that podcasting is about the audio and the audio experience. So I've done live streams like this, and I've tried to, record podcast episodes out of them. And my podcast editor comes back to me saying, Neal, you mentioned like all these comments on the screen in your podcast. To the listener, it's really strange. And I said, you know what? You're right. It is strange. And I should stop doing it. Now, there is a way to do it where you say, hey, everybody, welcome. I'm going to answer your questions after the interview. We're going to record the podcast the first 30 minutes, and the next 30 minutes we'll do Q&A. So there are ways of doing it, right? And then, you could use that as a video. But on the other hand, now, so that for me is podcasting. I just do podcast. I record it on Zoom. I have videos. I don't publish those videos. Now, YouTube, on the other hand, is primarily a search engine. People are looking for information. People are not looking to watch 1 hour interviews. Don't get me wrong. Some people will watch 1 hour interviews, but if they're looking for information on YouTube and they see a 5-minute video that's going to respond to their question versus a 1 hour podcast where it's two talking heads, my guess is that they're going to go to the 5-minute video. And another thing is that the way the YouTube algorithm works, and I'm sure the podcasting algorithms as well, is listen time. So it's a lot easier for me to create a 5-minute video and keep people on for 70% until the end than it is for a 1 hour podcast interview. So and this is sort of my plan, and this is another thing I learned at Podcast Movement, that YouTube, though, is a discovery engine for podcasts. How do we best leverage it? Well, you could, in an intelligent way, break up the live stream into little snippets that do answer those questions. So just as, Marco asked me, hey, Neal, is blogging dead? That is something that is a very, very popular. I have a blog post about that. I do my keyword research. That is something that probably a lot of people on YouTube are looking into as well. And taking that snippet, that 5-minute snippet where I answered that question and put it on YouTube, that is smart. So I believe if you truly want to leverage your podcast for video, you want to do it in an intelligent way where you're not, if you're streaming on YouTube, yeah, it's going to be archived, right? That 1 hour stream. But if you would take some of those snippets and break them up, you now have 5 different 5-minute videos that are going to perform way better, and they'll be optimized for keywords, right? And I'll take it one step further, Arnaudo and Marco as well. Something that I've learned that I plan on experimenting with is doing my podcast is half interview, half solo. But I'm also want to do more with YouTube, as I was saying. So I plan to do a 1 hour live stream on a specific subject where I will literally plan out 10 5-minute YouTube videos I'm going to record over the live stream and leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A. And now I know that, okay, if I wanted to record a talking head YouTube video, I'm going to record it anyway. Why don't I just record it in front of people over live stream, and I'll just repurpose that video? So I could take it one step further and repurpose that into, let's say I want to do 1 hour on blogging. I could repurpose some of those snippets into blogging podcasts. Maybe I take 3 of those snippets and record a podcast episode about it. So I think the net Arnaudo is it can all be used together with the right planning and respecting that all these, the podcasting world and the YouTube world are very, very different, and respecting those platforms, which is also going to help you perform better in search. So that, I believe, it takes a little bit more time. I believe it's worth the effort, but that is what I plan to do in the not so distant future, with my own podcast and with my own YouTube. And now I have a library, just like you, Marco. We have libraries of hours and hundreds of hours of video that we can tap into to create these little snippets that can become really, really valuable. But also, I would never publish them as is, because YouTube is cinematic. You have to up your game. I would add transitions and animations and make it look like it was intended for YouTube. So just like a podcast recording should be intended for a podcast, a YouTube recording should be intended for YouTube. I hope that answered your question. I don't think it's an easy answer, but I think if you really want to get the best of both worlds, that would be my advice. Marco, over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
A lot of information.
Studio.
And I know we have a follow-up comment there from Chris as well.
Yes, we have this question from Chris. You're so right about podcasting being a great way to create influence. However, I wish more were consistent, like Marco Novo, and keep putting in the hard work necessary to be successful. How do you stay consistent, Neal? This is for me, this is key, being consistent.
It's funny. I actually think that people overrate consistency.
Really?
And yeah, I think consistency is very important. Don't get me wrong, but it's it's not like this person publishes every week, so we're going to give them, a better ranking in the algorithm. I think what's more important than consistency is that in order to rank, whether it's a podcast is slightly different because sometimes Apple actually likes to recommend new podcasts, which is why sometimes new podcasts, a lot of them will rank pretty high for the first few weeks if they get a lot of downloads. Yes. But at the end of the day, okay, let's look at podcasting. I don't have any scientific data to back this up, but I believe what podcasting is they look at the average number of downloads you're getting per episode. And can you build that up over time? So if you stop podcasting for a few weeks, then you're not going to get new downloads on old episodes. You're not going to get new people listening to you. And the average downloads when you publish your next episode, they're not going to be as high because people have already tuned you out. They can only listen to 8 to 10 episodes a week. They begin to tune you out, listen to other episodes, and therefore your average downloads per episode go down, and therefore it's going to be harder to increase your downloads, and you got to start all over. Well, you don't have to start all over, but it gets a little bit harder. You got to put in more work. So that's why consistency is important there. With blogging and with YouTube, it's really, really interesting. The people that blow up in these spaces that get higher rankings are people that have developed what I call library of content. It's going to be this core concept that I talk about in my new book. But you need to have a certain volume of content to be recognized as an authority in the eyes of Google when it comes to blogging. So I have 1 or 2 blog posts on influencer marketing. Google doesn't care. When I have 20 or 30 blog posts on the topic, when I have 50 blog posts on the topic so that more than 10% of my blogs are about influencer marketing, the bots see that and they begin to recognize you as an authority just because you have a sheer volume of content around that subject. Okay. And that is what inevitably helps me outperform other sites that only have a few posts on influencer marketing. So with YouTube, it's similar. You need a library of content, but it's a little bit different. YouTube, the name of the game is keeping people on your channel. They find a video, you want them to go to another video and stay on YouTube. And the channels that do this are successful. In order to make that happen, you need to have a library of content. And that's why a lot of YouTubers, with blogging once a week, you can be effective. It took me a year to create this library of content, these 50 blog posts. I did it once a week consistently on blogging. With YouTube, you have people that are, YouTubing 3 to 5 times a week, and they're creating library of content around several different playlists. And therefore, no matter what topic they talk about, there's a playlist they can introduce people to, or a really, really targeted video they can introduce people to at the end that's going to keep them watching. Very, very different than Google. I mean, Google does look at bounce rate, but at the end of the day, if you write this great blog post, it's high in the search engine rankings, people come to it, they stay for a few minutes. Even if they leave, if they're staying longer on your site than another site, then Google's going to keep sending traffic to you. But with YouTube, a little bit different. You want to keep them in YouTube, and therefore you need to have a certain number, a certain volume. So if consistency means you want to consistently create that library of content in order to have more videos that introduce more people to keep them in on your channel, then yes. And if it means consistently blogging so that you create your library of content earlier rather than later, yes. The net of all this is, if you want to remain consistent, you need to be, number one, passionate. Well, you need to be an expert at what you're doing. You need to be passionate about it. It has to be directly linked to your business, right? And you need to believe in the ROI. And if you don't do all this, you're never going to be consistent, because and that's why I stopped my Maximize Your Social Influence podcast. If you go back, there were a few years where I did not publish one podcast episode because I didn't see the ROI until I was writing this book. And I realized that, wow, how am I going to tell people about the book? Podcasting is an incredible way to do so. It's an incredible way to build relationships with my listeners, but also with other people that I can interview on my show. So I know that it was a heavy answer. All of these topics are really top of mind right now as I'm like, beginning to write this book. But this is the conclusion I've come to. And that's why all of this is really, social media is important as well. But I believe the long form content that stays for years in various algorithms, whether it's a podcast or YouTube video or blogging, just has so much more strategic value from an overall digital marketing perspective. So I know it was a roundabout answer, but I hope that answered your question, Chris.
Absolutely amazing question. And I had a question in mind, and I was wondering, how can I connect this question to what you're talking? And you gave me the right hook, because you talked about ROI and this, and because my question is, because I think one of the problems about content is connecting, as you mentioned, connecting this to your business, because we try to go helpful, and this is good, but usually I think there's a lack of CTA. Let's put this simple. What do I mean about this? Okay, I made this content. Hopefully I helped you, but I'm not giving you the link to stay connected with me, to go to the next step and in a business perspective. Okay. So my question, Neal, is, how do you plan this? Having in mind, okay, I have a business. I want people to do this, whatever it is, generate leads, sell something, fill a form to contact you, whatever. How do you plan this? How do you structure this process? Because I think it's such a need to know how does it works.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a few concepts here that I think are really important. The first one is you need to be working on your business, not in your business, right? So in traditional companies, you hire people. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that try to do too much themselves. And specifically when it comes to this marketing infrastructure that I talked about, the blogging, the podcasting, the YouTubing, the social media, that takes a lot of time. So one of my secrets of how I do it is I have a team. I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk, but I recently published a podcast episode entitled "Why Content Creation Should Be a Team Effort." because you cannot be the best at all that. But there are really great people who know their stuff, who've helped others, who've already achieved high rankings, and you can tap into them globally, right? It's crazy what you can do. And when you do that, you're now on par with all those big businesses that I'm competing with for search engine rankings and YouTube, what have you. Now you're on the same par because now you can focus on the strategy in the business. And that is the key thing that everybody listening or watching should understand. So when I find, I have this process of pruning blog posts, or I have a process of creating weekly newsletters and emails. I find people around the world that are really good at like one thing. Like, I am good at content management, or I am good at Google Data Studio, which I need to create reports for a client. I'll find people around the world that are really good at these key things, and I tap into them and I learn, but also I leverage their expertise for my business, whether it's my own content creation or whether it's for my consulting, what have you. So it's being open about that, and also that allows me to be very, very strategic. That says, okay, what am I trying to do here? Where am I trying to build my business? So I'll give you a great example. So this is the first time I'm announcing it in public, but at Podcast Movement, one of the speakers was talking about blue ocean strategy. I don't know if you've heard of this concept, Marco, but in marketing, it's you got to be doing something different. And I realized that obviously podcasting becomes more and more competitive over time. And when you go to a podcast called Maximize Your Social Influence, you're not really sure what you're going to expect. You don't really know what that person is going to talk about. But also, I'm not selling services directly related to maximizing your social influence. At the end of the day, I'm talking about digital marketing topics. So why am I trying to have this? The brand name made sense when I had a book called Maximize Your Social. And then I was coming out with a book on influencer marketing. So Maximize Your Social Influence. But now the work that I do is digital marketing consulting, digital marketing coaching, either through this membership community or through my fractional CMO consulting. So I realized that I was doing it all wrong, and the content was not aligned with my business. So that's why I literally just had a new intro created last night. And today I expect to have my new image for my podcast. It's going to be called Your Digital Marketing Coach, because that's who I am. And that's what my podcast is about. And I want people to rely on me for my advice. It all fits together. And guess what? You'd think there's a lot of podcasts named that. There aren't, right? So I think that's going to help me. That's my blue ocean strategy. Forget about these fluffy brand names. Get to the point. If people want digital marketing help, they want to reach out to their digital marketing coach. I want to be there. And that's directly linked to my business. It's also linked to what I'm passionate about. I love helping businesses with digital marketing. So I felt like all the stars are aligning now. So that's one really, really specific way in which I've aligned the content with my business. And I think it's actually going to be way more effective once that new branding starts, hopefully next week.
Perfect. And this will lead to breaking news.
Breaking news, Chris. You heard it here first.
Perfect. And this will lead me to something that it's being hot here in Portugal this week. Okay. And I think this, because we are those people who are, we try things after America. It's dropping the interest there. Okay. When it's dropping the interest in America, we are the adopters here. And lately we are seeing these people talking about how you can work from the beach and get thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and just working 1 week, one morning per week or something. And everything's so easy, everything's sold somehow like so blue and sandy and salted water. Do you have this approach from people? Oh, I saw this video and it seems that digital marketing is so easy, it's just huge money. How can I be millionaire tomorrow? And what do you have about this approach?
Social media is really funny, because if you don't know people, but you see that they have a lot of followers, you just assume that they're credible. And I recently saw this in Clubhouse, where You know nothing about these people. They're just talking and talking and talking about what they do, but there's no way that they can back up their claims because it's audio only, right? So, at the end of the day, come on. I mean, if business was that easy, then everyone would be a millionaire, and we're not. So,
Yeah.
my answer is, and Marco, business at the core is about like, know, and trust. And no one is going to do business with you or buy your product until they like, know, and trust you. And a lot of the like, know, and trust today, especially with the pandemic, is coming digitally. So I do not know. I mean, would you ever buy after watching a video, like, spend a few $1,000s on something? No, of course not. You would do your homework on it. And so just to assume that people are going to do that is to assume that people are just not intelligent. Now, there are not intelligent people out there. There are people who fall for these stupid scams. Click the link to reset your password, right? And you look at the URL and it's going to, myfacebook.com instead of facebook.com, and the red flags go up and it's a phishing scam. But a lot of people don't know that. So there are a lot of people that you can fool out there. I'm not that person that's not the way I do business. That's not helping people. That is cheating people. So if you want to believe in that, you're searching for a reality that doesn't exist for that core thing. I mean, would you ever, who are the people that are going to buy from people that they don't know, like, or trust, or that are going to trust someone that, what are their credentials, right? And that's what it comes down to. And I think with fake news and with people being able to leverage social media, deep fake profiles like the Tom Cruises that we hear about, it's really, really easy to cheat people. Don't be cheated. You got to get back to your common sense that it just does not work that way. Is there money to be made? Sure. Can you do it without a lot of work? Well, at some point, once you build influence and you build authority, yeah. But when you build authority and influence, you still need to work to maintain it. And obviously, when you're at that stage, new doors open up. So you're still going to be working on things, although they become more strategic and they become more higher value. But there's no free lunch in society, man. There's no free lunch in business. It just does not happen. And if you think it does, then you're cheating yourself. And I hope that you're not investing your family money. I hope it's only your personal money, because I'd hate for your family to know what you're doing if you're getting into those schemes. So I'll stop there, Marco.
Yeah, and that's a huge point on that. It's people making loans and being in trouble because they trusted these people, because they promise you this paradisic life, and I'm going to give you two examples that I think they are good to illustrate this thing. It's like you play a video and you mentioned soccer, football, that as I like to say, and it's like you showing a 5-minute long video with just Ronaldo and Messi and saying you can be them. Look, they are making millions. They are in the business covers and whatever, and huge cars, huge houses. Yes, but they are a few. It's not the rule. And the other thing, yesterday I was talking with a big friend of mine. Maybe you heard about him, Pedro Caramês, which is the lead expert here in Portugal about LinkedIn.
Yes,
And
good guy.
He lives 10 minutes walking from the beach. Okay, and I asked him, look, how long do you live there close to the beach? And he said me, well, more than 15 years. Great. How long do you have a business? Well, more than 12 years. How many hours have you worked on the beach? None.
Exactly.
The same for me. And I live 15 minutes driving from the beach. Okay, so, and the funny thing about this is that some people, they are selling this dream of working from the beach. I've been watching them, following them on social media, for instance, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and I've never seen them posting photos. Look, I'm working at the beach, and now suddenly they are trying to sell you this stupid dream, because when you go to the beach, and you should go to the beach, of course, if you can, it's not for work.
If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And even myself, and maybe you yourself too, Mark. I mean, I have had some near misses with some scams myself. So people that want to do business with me or people that want to invite me to speak. And, Google is your best friend, but it's also just being logical, being rational, being cool, not getting excited about the opportunity, but just asking questions and reverse engineering. At the end of the day, can I trust this person? And yeah, I was close to starting a business venture in Japan with someone else until I realized that they were trying to tap into their parents' credibility as entrepreneurs, but they themselves had no track record, right? And taking me out to very, very nice dinners to make it look like they were doing really well, when at the end of the day they were just living off their parents' money, for instance, right? Or others that, hey, we want to invite you to speak at this event. It was for this incredible amount. We'll pay it to you up in advance. All we need, you just need to, send us this information. And when I did research, I found out there were other influencers who had been cheated by this person. And really the people that got cheated are the banks and the financial system. So anyway, the net is that the internet is a whole big world out there. You just got to be smart about it, be logical, and if it seems too good to be true, really do your homework. But the only people, that's why I like interviewing other authors on my podcast, because they've written a book, they put themselves out there, right? Whether or not the book is good or not, or how compelling it is, or how original it is another thing. But they put themselves out there. They've opened up who they are, why they're there, why they're writing, and they've shared their thoughts. To me, that's way more than someone who just has a really, really good looking Instagram ad and just a landing page, and they're standing in front of like Ferraris and Maseratis, looking really rich, but you don't know how they got there, and they don't want to teach you how they got there until you pay money. And really, when you look at all the thought leaders today, they're blogging, they're podcasting, they're on YouTube, they're giving away a ton of information, and they're building credibility. So if you do a Google search, you can't find these people, just, stay away, run as fast as you can, the opposite direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Chris made an amazing point here. If the hook is driven by the fear of missing out, this scarcity thing, this trigger, as they like to say, I think it's a good red flag. That's a reason for me to pause. So I think it's a good red flag for us to get away.
Well said, Chris. Very true.
Absolutely. Well, Neal, you mentioned something that a couple of minutes ago about going to an event, offline event after these crazy times. There's something that I don't like, and we see this often, which is offline struggling against online. It's one of another or another. It's Cristiano or Messi. It's okay now. By these days, it's not that, but at some point it was Michael Jordan against Larry Bird, for instance, or something. And I think we can use both. And I think that, and some people are saying, okay, now we will stay on this online event paradigm, and offline, or it's over. I don't believe in that. Can you give us some, how can I say, some tips to take advantage of both things? Because I truly believe that you love to be in place, interacting with people, and also climbing the stage and being there, because it's a thrilling and amazing feeling. I know it because I made a couple of speaking as well. So can you understand? Because I think one of the problems, people don't take the maximum advantage of these presential events, and there's so many potential there. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because hopefully we will be back to them soon.
Yeah, podcast movement was really interesting. It was in Nashville, and with coronavirus, I'm sure in Portugal I've seen as well. It comes in waves and variants, right? So it was at a time when Delta was just destroying India and Asia, but it really wasn't as prevalent in the United States yet. So I think we were recommended to wear masks. Not everybody wore masks. Now Tennessee is actually one of the hotbed of coronavirus since we left. So it was a little bit early and a little bit safer than it is now. I know that in the YouTube world, that VidCon actually canceled They were going to be doing it in October in Anaheim, California, which is like 15 minutes away from me. They canceled. But Vid Summit, which is a smaller video marketing conference, is actually going on. And I'm actually going to that for anyone listening. It's going to be in Los Angeles. Man, I forget the dates. End of this month, actually, September 27th, 8th, 9th. And so podcast movement for me, I'll be really honest. I speak at a lot of events. I usually only go to events that I speak at. But I realized that podcasting is a world that I don't know enough about. And I went to PodFest, which happened right before coronavirus started. And podcast movement for me was a few things. Number one, I wanted to learn from the best. And I know that these events bring in the best speakers. So I know that I'm going to learn. And I diligently went through all the schedule and created my own little agenda. And I was just really excited for each and every speech. But number two is obviously they offer you networking events, right? So you're going to meet people. So, hey, standing next in line, it turns out that this guy's in charge of like marketing for ClickBank, and he's in charge of their podcast, and they want to work with influencers. So awesome. So we have a phone call set up, right? But it's also another thing I love about events is I get to go to the exhibitors, and that's where you see the latest technology. So you can go to, I had this hard time imagining how to do a website for my podcast. I never had a website for it. And then there was a little booth there. It was a guy, a company called Podpage. And he's like, Neal, in 5 minutes, we can create a website for you. It's all automated. Put in the RSS feed, then boom. So if you go to podcast.nealschaffer.com, you'll actually see my brand new podcast website that was automatically generated using the service called Podpage. I don't know, $20 a month. It's a no-brainer, right? But if I hadn't gone to the conference, I wouldn't have found out about it. And guess what? The AWeber folks were there. I was on an 1.5-hour call the other day with AWeber. They were sharing with me their technology, their roadmap. And now I'm building, maybe I'll move over to AWeber. I don't know, but I'm building a relationship with them. This all came about from going to the conference. And I'll say the other. So you got the education, right? You got the networking, you got the technology. The other one is when you're out of where you work, when you're outside of your location, you always are able to see things in a new light. And I'm able to get my biggest aha moments, my biggest strategic sort of pivots when I'm not home. So being out at a conference gives you, if it's outside of, where you live, gives you that advantage as well. So I believe it's an R&D expense. And guess what? You're going to laugh about this. For Vid Summit, I applied to be a volunteer, right? So I'm actually going to be volunteering one day at the registration booth. And the second day I'll be able to go to the events, and I pick the day I want to go, but I want to be part of the community. So for me, volunteering gives me the ability to network and meet all these people. Maybe some of them, like when I went to the AWeber booth, the director of marketing said, oh my gosh, I found one of your articles about email marketing on Google, and then I signed up to your list. I receive your weekly newsletter. It's so nice to meet you, right? And so I'm looking for those moments at Vid Summit. But you cannot replicate that in person. So I know with coronavirus, there's a lot of cancellations. Things are opening up. For me, blogging, podcasting, YouTube/video marketing, and blogging could be content marketing, and then just general social/digital media marketing. Those are 4 types of conferences that I'd like to go to once a year, and therefore once a quarter, once every 90 days. I want to see myself at a conference, whether I'm speaking there or not. And I urge all of you to be thinking the same. Look out. I have a blog post about social media conferences. I need to update it for 2022, but there's a lot of conferences that are planning for the spring. I know Social Media Marketing World is my social media marketing conference that I've spoken at every year and that I highly recommend to all of you. So you just cannot replicate that experience on those 4 different levels that I mentioned. So hopefully that answers your question, Marco.
Absolutely. And I'm willing to go, because one of the things I do, because I didn't get to that level of crossing the ocean yet. Hopefully, I hope that 2022 I will do this for the first time. But I go often. I used to go often to Spain, because there the digital marketing level it's good. And yes, I do interact and get that thing, those kind of rent those brains. And yes, I keep in touch with new things. So for instance, I think, yes, it was you with the metrical people in
That was
social
Social
media
Media
world
Marketing
last.
World. Yeah, that was
Yes.
at the very end there. Yeah, right before the pandemic started, late February of 2020. Yeah,
So I met them as well in Spain.
nice.
Yes,
And
really,
they
Juan.
are
It's
from, aren't they from Portugal?
no,
Or are they
no.
from
They are from
Spain?
Spain, from
Okay.
Madrid. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I met because usually Metricool, they monitor the events hashtags, okay, and they at the middle of the conference and at the end they said, okay, this those are the top tweeters and this kind of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. They on that particular thing they are amazing. Yes, and they are really nice people. They are
They're really nice
really
people.
nice
I
people.
agree.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have this comment from Chris before we start wrapping up. I like the virtual conferences. They are easy to participate in, money and time, and have the best international speakers, networking opportunities, and virtual product demos. Yes, absolutely. I think we should look at these. None of them are better than the other. They are different and they can come together blended in a very good way. I think it's the point we should have in mind. At least it's my my 2 cents on this. Neil, we are about to finish. Can you kind of give us 3 tips about digital marketing? What we should do, not to get 1 million in half an hour, but to somehow.
No, I'm going to show you how to make 1 million. um, yeah, I mean, I guess number one, you got to become, if you really want to leverage digital marketing, you got to become a content creator. So there's 4 main types of content you can create online. It's either going to be blogging, podcasting, videos with YouTube, or like photos. Instagram is still good for that, even though they're not a photo sharing app anymore. But pick the one that you're good at or that you want to learn, and go for it, and start creating content and use that as the vehicle to start to get known and to be able to reach out to people. I, in all honesty, co-started the School of Influence podcast with Amanda because Amanda wanted to build. She didn't have a platform. She didn't have a website or a YouTube or anything. But when I told her that, hey, podcast is a great way to meet people and we can interview business leaders, she's like, that's great. I can build a platform and network at the same time. I'm like, yes, that's what podcasting is, right? So we did that instead of building a YouTube channel or co-writing a blog together. So you have to be passionate about it, but it also has to meet your business objective, which I think it can. So pick one and go for it. That's like number one. Number two is influencers. I mean, if you want to get ahead in an industry, try to befriend, try to get to know all the people around there that already have a community. Genuinely try to connect with them, genuinely read their content, engage with their content, comment. That really goes a long way today because there are many people who are just not genuine or authentic. So, and I would say that influencer marketing to me sort of replaces organic social media marketing. Instead of, I'm working with a real estate agency. Well, they're a company that owns a number of brokerages. So it's like, why are we creating our own content? Why don't we just leverage our agents' content, right? And become a channel that curates 100% user-generated content. It's something that like Ritz-Carlton does on Instagram or Disneyland does on Instagram. If we can build a big enough fan base and enough people talk about our product in social media, we can do that. So let's try to do that. So that's sort of my you got the content creation, the long form content to be found. You got the inciting word of mouth, with influencers, getting people to talk about your product on social media. That's sort of number two. And number three is, I guess it gets back to the ROI of, hey, you only have so much time, you only have so much budget. Where in marketing are you spending that money? Are you spending it in the right place? And I would challenge everybody to do a complete reset. I had a client, they were spending $10,000 a month on Google Ads. We pulled the plug. We went into blogging. Today, they get more traffic less than a year later from their blog posts organically than they got through the $10,000 that they spent with Google Ads. And the quality of content quality of traffic is much higher, and they're converting better too. And I think that really is what it's all about. So really think hard and digital first, right? there's a play for traditional marketing and physical, media.
Absolutely.
But man, you got to be digital first today, and your
Absolutely.
budget needs to be digital first as well. So put all that into perspective. And if you need any help, reach out to Marco, reach out to me. We'd love to help you.
Absolutely. And do you have any perspectives about the launching of the new book?
Well, I hope to have a free preview available in the next week or two. And like I said, it's going to include a lot of what we talked about today. And I am going to, for the first time, release a preview before finalizing the book because I want to get feedback as well. But it will become what I'm hoping to be the default digital marketing playbook for a digital first post-pandemic world that does not exist. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited, as you can tell.
Perfect.
And if you go to nealschaffer.com and you sign up on, one of the widgets are on my list, you'll be the first to be able to download that. I think it's really going to be a game changer.
Perfect. I was about to ask you where people can find you. You already made it. So stay tuned because Neal already promised me that he will be back to talk about the new book, and I'm looking forward to that. Neal, thank you so much for your time. It was an amazing experience again.
Thank you, my friend.
Really insightful, as usual. It's
trying to shake hands with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all of you who were watching the show and from Belgium, United States, Brazil. Let me see. Freddie, I don't know where he is, but thank you as well. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Arnaldo. Muito obrigado, menino. And Chris, thank you so much. Stay tuned because I will be back. And don't forget, and I think you got a couple of some Los Angeles. So he's your neighbor.
There we go. All right. Thanks, Freddie. Everybody.
I think you got a few followers to your podcast as well, subscribers, because I was watching them clicking. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will be back soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Easy.